Good afternoon, and welcome back to Keeping It Real with V and G. What matters? Today, we have a very special guest for our show. We're going to have Mr. Sidney King. He is the president and CEO of Commonwealth National Bank in Mobile, Alabama. Before returning to Commonwealth, Mr. King served 12 years as the Kansas City Regional President for Liberty Bank and Trust, 9 years as President and CEO at Commonwealth, and 5 years as President and CEO at First American Bank in Jackson, Mississippi. His banking career started in 1982 at Harris Trust and Savings Bank in Chicago, where he successfully completed their formal credit training program. Mr. King then served 10 years in various increasingly responsible lending positions at the Independence Bank of Chicago. Prior to his banking career, Mr. King was employed for 5 years with a Chicago-based public accounting firm. During this time, he earned the accreditation as a certified public accountant. He is a graduate of DePaul University in Chicago, where he received a degree in accounting. Mr. King has served in various leadership positions on numerous civic and community boards throughout his career. I wish to introduce to you Mr. Sidney King, CEO and President of Commonwealth National Bank of Mobile. He's going to talk with us about the services that the bank offers and why it is important for people of color to bank Black. Services that the bank offers. Mr. King, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity to come out, and share a little bit about Commonwealth and, encourage people to, as you say, bank Black, to support our Black banks throughout our country. Commonwealth was founded in 1976 with the vision of the founders to serve the historically underserved African-American community in Mobile, Alabama market, where they were hoping for an institution that would be able for the community to benefit from the institution through business growth and acquisition, and also through employment. In today's, unfortunately, there are only about a dozen Black-owned and operated banks left in America. That's amazing, in that we are in the 21st century, 2021, and there are only about 15 or less than 15 Black-owned banks remaining in America. One of the challenges with that, the Community Reinvestment Act. Community Reinvestment Act is something that came about, which was a good bill to stop the redlining. The anti-redlining law is what it was called. And its basic principle and basic purpose was to help bigger banks come into the urban core inside the red circle, the red line. You've probably heard of redlining. Inside the red lines, and make loans and provide and support those communities as they were being supported by them with their deposits. Unfortunately, what happened, CRA has converted and changed throughout the years to where it is not about the original intent, but about doing things in the community, what they call reinvestment or community investments. For example, a bigger bank today can get more credit for CRA for building a sports stadium, as I say, building a playground for rich people, than they do for doing the original intent, making loans inside the red lines. When you look at Commonwealth and you look at the other Black-owned banks that are remaining in America today, most of our branches are inside the red lines. We are there to support and grow those areas and grow those markets. And Commonwealth, we've got a history here in the Mobile market. I will say back in, again, I left the bank in 2008, but from 2002 to 2008, I would say we were truly fulfilling the vision of the founders of Commonwealth. We were making loans to small business. We were educating the community. We were giving back through CREEP programs like the St. Stephen's Road Improvement Association, which we are looking to revitalize. We were giving scholarships to the valedictorians and salutatorians at high schools that banked with us. We were doing things in the community and providing the support in the community and rebuilding our community as the bank should. We were even paying dividends to the shareholders, to the patient shareholders who had invested with us. Unfortunately, there was a slight loss of vision with the leadership of the bank, and they sought to go in a direction to diversify the customer base and the market, and seeking business from a community that was already well served, that was not the original intent of the founders. But in 2020, and I would say during that time, the bank was troubled, a classified institution in 2009. It went to a formal agreement in 2012 that advanced to a consent order in 2015. Fortunately, the leadership of the bank changed, and we have new leadership that came in to the bank. And I was able to, I was convinced, my arm was twisted, to return to the bank about 18 months ago, where we came in with the focus of building the bank back better, so that we could better serve the needs of the community. And I'm proud to say that in that 18-month period, we have made significant progress, significant changes to the bank, and refound the vision that we were created to serve. We were fortunate to have the consent order removed, and the OCC was so impressed with the work that we had done, they've asked us to mentor another bank that is having some trouble on how to overcome and come out from under a consent order. So I guess I like to say, in the words of Michael Jordan, who put it best, I'm back. But anyway, there was a book, The Color of Money, and The Color of Money, it talked about the history of Black banks in America. And it basically talked about how if we are going to have successful communities, you need a strong banking institution in the community to serve the needs of that community and to serve the lending needs of the community. Because without access to credit and capital, it is difficult for entities to grow, for businesses to grow. An example is with contractors. Contractors, they can do the work, they have the skills, they have the technical abilities to do the work. The challenge with a lot of minority contractors is carrying the work because they've got to make their payroll, buy their supplies, and sometimes 45 to 60 days before they get a payout on that job. And with a lot of small businesses, it's difficult to carry that job. So we end up taking smaller opportunities, smaller jobs, and we miss out on some of the bigger opportunities. Well, in the Mobile area, we're about to see a big opportunity with this airport project coming up. And we need to make sure that minority contractors, minority businesses are in place to benefit from that. And it's not just the building side of it. There are other areas that are going to be needed, other trades and other skills that are going to be needed. So find out what's going on there, get prepared. And we are working with the city actually to put together a program to provide some funding for that. So clearly, Black banks are relevant, what we're doing here in the Mobile market and what Commonwealth is now doing to get back to the vision of the founders and fulfill that vision to better serve the community, the African-American community here in the Mobile area. We see a lot of things that take place. I was talking about CRA earlier, how, there are opportunities that come to our community, things that are built for our community, programs that are created for our community. But what happens in many instances, the majority community finds a way to change things and take it to benefit the majority community. For example, it used to be there were programs set aside for minority businesses, people of color. Many of those businesses or those programs now are created for what they call diverse businesses. And a diverse business, well, for lack of a better phrase, the diverse business includes everybody but a straight white man. So anybody can qualify as a diverse business and benefit from the programs that were initially created and set aside for people of color. For example, too, when you look at government contracts, 75% of government contracts, diverse contracts, go to white women-owned businesses. We've got to make some changes for those things. And in order for us to make those changes and see the growth and development in our community, we have got to support the banks that are there in our community, created for our communities, and build the African-American bank. Because when you look at banking in general, there are the largest African-American bank. Well, actually, until recently, I think Liberty, we finally reached our first $1 billion Black-owned bank in 2021. We reached our first $1 billion Black-owned bank. Now, contrast that to the largest Hispanic American bank, which is over $40 billion with a B. And the largest Asian American bank is even bigger at about $44-45 billion. The individual banks, the largest Black-owned bank, we finally, in 2021, have a Black-owned bank that has reached $1 billion. We've got to work together to grow our businesses. You know, you've heard how they say money goes through the Black community so quickly that before you see it, well, I guess Marvin Gaye put it best. Money, we make it. Before we see it, they take it. In most instances, we give it to them. We give it away because we don't own the businesses. We don't own things that can circulate those dollars going back through our communities. And a Black bank is going to be the business that is going to help to make that happen. So we've got to take that $1 trillion plus of economic benefit that we create annually and force it through businesses within our communities to grow our communities. Because a challenge that Earl Graves Jr. came to Mobile several years ago, and he gave a challenge to say, how many of you can identify 10 Black service providers? Because we've got to find ways to support Black-owned businesses in order for our community to grow and prosper, because Black-owned businesses hire our youth and hire individuals in our community, mostly that look like we do. So we've got to support those businesses. And my challenge to you is to name 10 Black service providers. Now, set a goal if you haven't accomplished it, and then sustain that. So set a goal to accomplish 10 Black service providers. You achieve the 10 Black service providers, and you sustain 10 Black service providers. And Black service providers, meaning your doctors, your lawyers, of course, your bank, realtors, insurance, pest control, electricians, pastors, et cetera. Black businesses that are supporting your community, that you support their business. Now, a challenge that a lot of us have is when in the past, we've gone to a Black businesses, something didn't go right, and what we do, we leave. We don't tell them what the challenge was, we leave. What we've got to do, we've got to give them the opportunity to fix those challenges, because when things go bad, we go out and we tell everybody. But when things are good, we don't talk as much. We got to build up our Black-owned businesses. We got to encourage them to do better. If they're doing something that they should not be doing, tell them, don't just leave. Story I heard years ago, this funeral home, she said, if you enjoyed our services, tell a friend. If you didn't, if it didn't meet your specifications, tell us. And that way they have the opportunity to fix it. So as we grow and work together to build Black-owned businesses, that's how we rebuild our community, and we build that Black Wall Street along the Gulf Coast. Because if you think about it, in most of our Black cities, there were areas of Black commerce where Black businesses were supported and growing and supporting the community. But you don't see those businesses today. Things like Community Reinvestment Act, has taken those businesses and moved them, or taken the resources and moved them out of those businesses, and those businesses eventually fail. But we've got to find and purposely build those businesses back in our community, find ways to grow the businesses in our community so that we can build a better future for ourselves and for our next generations, for generations to come. Because you've probably heard this statement in the past. It said there was an important job that needed to be done. Anybody could have done it. It was everybody's responsibility, but nobody did it. Then everybody got mad at somebody because nobody did what anybody could have done. We've got to take the initiative to do these things for the good of our community. We've got to take the initiative to support businesses in our community, because nobody else is going to do it. They will allow us to, destroy and take away from our communities. They will come in and take from our communities, give discounts to some. They cherry pick to take the cream of the crop. And that's one of the challenges what CRA did. It forced the big banks to come in and cherry pick, taking the doctors, taking the lawyers, and even the pastors, giving the pastors a lot of benefits, vacations, car loans, home loans. But when that pastor stood in that pulpit, they weren't interested in that congregation that he was looking at out there, or she was looking at out there. We've got to find ways to do this ourselves. We've got to take the initiative. So I encourage each and every one of you, come into Commonwealth tomorrow, open your account, go online to ecommonwealthbank.com and fill out the paperwork to open your account at Commonwealth. Let's start working together and build that next Black Wall Street right here in Mobile, and rebuild the community for ourselves and for future generations to come. And more importantly, we've got to get in position to benefit from this airport project. They typically have a 10% goal for minority participation. In this project, I've heard they're talking 20%. It needs to be 35, 40%, given that Mobile today is over 50% African American. So we've got to demand what's there for us. We've got to go out and seek it, and not just sit back and watch somebody else and hope somebody else will do it for us. We take the bull by the horn. We take the initiative, and we rebuild our community. We build it back better so that our future generations can benefit and see great opportunities from this. So with that, I will yield to questions.
Okay, all right. We do appreciate you taking the time with us, and we do have a few questions. One of the questions, and I know you talked about the CRA. Would you be a little more specific about what it is and what are the disadvantages to it?
Okay, so the Community Reinvestment Act is the government's anti-money laundering law. It used to be that banks had a red line around certain communities. That's why the wealth disparity is where it is now. If you were inside that red line, it was more difficult for you to get a loan for business. It was more difficult for you to get a loan for home ownership. It was just more difficult for you to get financing. You may be able to go get a car loan, but when you talk about a business loan, they found a reason to turn you away. The government came in with the Community Reinvestment Act and said, banks, you have to lend inside of these areas. And they put some penalties on them if they didn't. Several years ago, banks were fined for not doing things CRA, with having good CRA programs in place. And even if you want to grow and expand, they look at your CRA rating before they allow you to merge, before they allow you to make acquisitions. So it is still important. But what has happened with CRA is the big banks have come in and somewhat had them change some of the requirements. So they may make a contribution to a nonprofit that makes a statement that they're doing things in the urban community, or their charter is to do things in the urban community, which they may or may not be doing. The example I gave, they build sports stadiums because a corner of that sports stadium is located in a low-income area, that they get it to qualify for community reinvestment. And so, as I say, they get more credit for building a playground for athletes than doing the initial intent of CRA, which is coming in, lending into areas where they are getting their deposits. So it's a good bill from the intent, but they have changed it to where it more benefits them and less involved in the initial intent.
And along those lines, didn't we also broaden the definition of a minority?
Yes. I mentioned earlier, minority, it used to be minority businesses were for people of color.
Yes.
Today, a minority, they actually don't use the word minority, they use diverse. It is now a diverse business, and a diverse business includes, white women, disabled veterans, of course, people of color, and even the LGBTQ are considered diverse businesses. Yeah. So all of these diverse businesses are now vying for programs that were set aside for people of color. And most of those programs, the people that are receiving the benefits from them are not people of color.
Would you take a few minutes and define for us? I know we know what you're talking about, but some of our public, our audience may not. Talk a little bit about what exactly is redlining.
Okay. So redlining, it used to be that, in certain areas, you go inside of a community, the banks did not make loans in those areas. When you look at the book, The Color of Money, I mentioned that while I was talking earlier, and if you haven't read it, it's a good read to understand why the wealth gap is where it is today, why people of color were discriminated from and held back from the wealth that the larger institutions and larger communities are receiving. Because when you look at today, the average African American family's net worth is about $17,000, where the average white American's net worth is about $170,000.
Yeah.
And a lot of that wealth comes from home ownership. We were not allowed, as African Americans, we were not allowed to acquire homes. And if you had a home in a certain area, the values were depressed. So you didn't see the appreciation, and which is where a lot of the wealth comes from. I mean, even today, a Black college graduate has a less percentage of home ownership than a white high school dropout. So we've got to change that, and we've got to, work to support those, individuals. And I will also state that when you are looking for a home, don't just go and call the name that's on the sign. That person typically, for the most of the time, is going to be a white majority. And if you call them, they are going to do the work and get both sides of the commission. My wife is a realtor, and I'm not saying this to advocate for her, which she's my favorite realtor and she's very good at what she does. But she had a customer that came to see a house that she had listed. That person came and saw the house and was very interested and said they would think they were going to write an offer on it. She gets a call from another realtor the next day saying that they were bringing an offer. She calls that customer or tries to reach that customer and let them know that there's an offer coming to see if they wanted to place that, put their offer in. Well, what they did is they went to a realtor that looked like them, said, I want to put an offer on this house, and put that offer in, and both realtors shared the commission. What we tend to do is we call the person who's on that house. We need to find a way to go and find a person of color to represent us. Now, I'm not just saying get anyone, get somebody that has the skills and the abilities to support your needs, but go out and find that individual and support that individual. Find ways to create opportunities for wealth and growth in the African American community, and you get to check one of those buckets for your Black service providers. I tell you, years ago, I bought a car from a Black dealer that I'd never met. I called the dealership up, and I, found out that there was a Black dealer or salesman. I went into the agency. I asked for him. He happened to be out that day, but because I asked for him, they had to share that commission with him. So find ways to build opportunities to create business in the Black community and support the Black community. Anyway, getting back to the redlining. So what they did and still do is they don't make loans, homes in certain areas. They don't make business loans in certain areas because there's this invisible red line that they said you don't want to lend in those communities because you don't want to see them grow. And you see a lot of food deserts in those communities because grocery stores are not in those communities because they can't get the funding that they need, the financing that they need to build those stores in those communities. And when African American store owners want to go in those communities, they find it difficult to get financing for those businesses. That's why it's important to go to a bank that doesn't discriminate because of the way you look. We look at deals to find a way to make a loan work based on the ability to repay.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for that. One other question from me, and then I think Miss Susan over here has one. My concern, we went to dinner last night, and we went downtown, and we went to an excellent Black-owned restaurant.
What are you talking about?
I'm not going to call a name right now. They're coming on the show. We've got them lined up to come on. We were so impressed. But we also noted that there are several new Black businesses in the downtown area. That's difficult to break into when you are a person of color, specifically a Black person. Okay. What is the bank doing? Or can the bank do something to start recruiting some of these most of them are young people, these young people who are starting these new businesses?
Now, again, From a startup business, it's kind of difficult to get financing from a traditional bank. Only about 8% of startup businesses get loans from a bank because they don't have the history on the repayment ability.
Yes.
But what I would recommend is come in, have a conversation with us, get to know the banker, let us get to know you and your business so that we can be in a position and we understand we can better make that loan to help you get that business started. I mean, we had a startup business recently. They were starting up a manufacturing business, didn't have a lot of resources, didn't have any history, but we looked at what they were doing and the opportunity that they had and what we saw as a true business that has a true growth potential, and we made that loan. So getting to know the banker, letting us get to know your business helps. When you come right in and say, here's my loan application, I want you to make this loan, but I don't really have any history. I can't really show you how I'm going to repay, but I think it'll work. That's a little more difficult. But if we come in, we're having those conversations, we see what's going on, we make a few suggestions here and there because bankers are some of the smartest people you'll ever meet, in my opinion, because we see so many different opportunities.
Yeah.
But having that conversation allows us the opportunity to be in a position to better help you. The other challenge with a lot of those programs, those businesses downtown, they never come to see us. We've got to get some marketing going, and we're developing a marketing campaign where we're going to get out and do that. If you look back in, I say between 2002 and 2008, the best years in Commonwealth's history, we had some great marketing campaigns going, some great advertising.
Yes.
Bank where your daughter could one day be president. What's your bank doing to make your community a better place?
Yes.
Bank where you don't get lost in the crowd. We had some great programs out there that were working and we were growing. We're going to bring that back.
Okay, great. That sounds great because I really think maybe some recruiting or more marketing on the bank's side would definitely help these, because I think we're in that mode now where we are beginning to realize we have to support our own.
Yeah.
So,
and we're going out and and making the commitments. We just brought on Al Johnson as a commercial lender. If you're local, you may know Al Johnson. He was actually president of the bank before I came on board.
I remember.
My first time around. We brought him back in a lending capacity. We're getting ready to hire another young man that we're going to bring on as a commercial lender, and we brought on another person as a business development. So we are ready to get out and get in the community. We just brought a person on board actually to help us work with getting back to the church communities, because through what I call our black hole period, we alienated a lot of the churches in the area, and we want to get back and let them know we understand church lending. We've got a good team that's in place now to understand church lending, whereas my predecessors, the group that came during that time did not understand it, and they ran a lot of those folk away. They just were rude. But we're back, and we want to rebuild those relationships, rebuild the reputation that was damaged a little bit. But we've got refocus. We understand the role that the vision that the founders had, and we are back to fulfill the founders' vision to rebuild and build this African American community. Now, let me see. We are a bank for all people, but our focus is to serve that historically underserved African American community and help build wealth and close that wealth gap in the Black community.
Yes, great. That sounds wonderful. Miss Susan has a question for you also.
Okay, we have something from our audience on Facebook. Miss Yolanda Long asks, do you have a list of Black-owned businesses?
Now we are working on that list. There are several entities that are putting together a list of Black-owned businesses. And I know we've got from Pensacola, we got the list that they put together for Black-owned businesses over there. The Chamber has a list of Black-owned businesses that's about to come out shortly. The government is Vivian Figures and some other folk are putting together through a program in Montgomery, a list of Black-owned businesses in Alabama. And then the Vivian's Door, I know she's pulling some things together to list the Black-owned businesses in the area. So we are actively looking at those names and looking at what's happening in the Chamber. We're involved with the Black Chamber and the businesses that are there with Mr. King. No relations. We've been working with them to find ways. We're even talking to the Legacy Group over in Gulfport, Mississippi, where they're working to build Black-owned businesses over there to
Good.
expand our footprint. That's why we're bringing on another lender to help expand that footprint, because we want to be not just the Black-owned bank here in Mobile. We want to serve this Gulf Coast community, because there are a lot of deserving Black-owned businesses that are just not getting the kind of support that they should and that they deserve. And we want to be there to be the bank of choice.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Got one more from Miss Yolanda Long. She says, what about consumer accounts that do not have good credit, but are forced to open bank accounts by the Social Security Administration for their monthly benefit?
Okay. So we have, as far as opening accounts, we can open those accounts and people are getting those Social Security benefits. The government's trying to cut back on some of their expenses, and they want the people to get into bank accounts. Now, what we want you to do is you got to be disciplined in managing that bank account. It may require opening a savings account initially and then developing that opportunity to open a checking account. It depends on the discipline. We want to help. We have that second chance account to help people who have lost their banking privileges. We want to get you back in banking, because in the Black community, we're still about 40% unbanked or underbanked. If you don't have a banking relationship, you never learn the discipline of money. And if you don't learn the discipline of money, all you can teach is poverty to your children. So we have that second chance account to help people get back into banking. We want to provide financial education training to them. I don't like to say financial literacy, financial education, because everybody could use some education. Because if we don't teach you how to use money and how to work with a banking relationship, you teach that to your children. We want to break that generational curse of poverty. And again, build wealth in the Black community. Without a banking relationship, it's difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very much so. Okay, I think we have exhausted our list of questions for you.
Okay.
And we do really appreciate you coming, and you made everything so plain and simple for us, so we would understand. We are definitely going to be looking at moving in that direction. Now, my particular church organization has an account with Commonwealth. And I just happen to be the treasurer. So I am kind of in and out, either through the drive-through or in the bank. So we're there. We're there.
Well, we appreciate that.
We do appreciate you and want to thank you for coming. And maybe a little later on, we may think in terms of asking you to come back and kind of share some financial information with us.
We'll be happy to.
Or when you get a new program or something along those lines.
Yeah, we'd be happy to. And I'd just like to say, we encourage our audience to come and open an account. Bring us one account, we'll earn the rest.
That's true. Okay. We have to stop just a second because we have one more question. Okay.
You and I discussed this, Mr. King, about the future when it comes to technology. Can you give me some insight as to where Commonwealth Bank is going and how they're going to sort of use technology to draw in those millennials and younger bankers or future bankers? So.
Okay. Well, that's a very good question, and we did discuss that briefly of what we're looking to do during the time that I call again the Black Hole period. The leadership converted our core processor to a company that does not have the kind of technology that we need. We are looking at ways of improving that and increasing that. My chairman actually just went to a fintech program in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and we've been having conversations with a lot of those companies that provide the different kinds of financial services, financial programs through these different fintechs that we can kind of layer on to what we're doing or add on to what we're doing so that we can bring that technology. We're going to have the best technology. We're going to be in front of most banks with the kind of technology from the conversations we're having with these various fintechs, where you'll be able to open an account online, but not just open an account online. We'll almost instantly have access to that account and being able to fund that account. You'll be able to apply for loans online. We're putting things in place that the young community wants to see, because we learned 77% of millennials will not do business with a bank that does not have online account opening or mobile banking app.
Mhm.
And we've got to get those things in place. They are coming in 2022. We are going to be that bank. And like I say, we are building it back better than it was before, so that we can rebuild our community and make our community prosperous, and say, close that wealth gap, because we want to make billionaires or millionaires here at Commonwealth. Our goal is to make wealth common in the African American community. So get ready for that airport project. Find out what kind of different trades that they're going to be needing. I mean, I talked to a guy that's a photographer. There's going to be a need where they need pictures taken. There's going to be daycare, childcare. There's going to be meals that are going to be needed, transportation needs. So there are other things than just brick and mortar building the building that's going to be required for that airport project. Find out what's going on. See if it's something that your trade and your business can do. I mean, in order to build the kind of goals that we want to see, some businesses are going to have to be created. Buying the doors and being able to get their minority goals. If we can get those goals increased, if we can put enough pressure to get those goals increased, we got to build businesses to support that. So that's some of the things that we're looking to do. I know the question was about technology, but I'm talking about building wealth for our African American communities. And we want to be a big part of that at Commonwealth. We want to be a catalyst to help businesses grow, businesses of color in the Mobile area and along the Gulf Coast become viable business owners and build that wealth for the future and future generations.
One more question.
One more question. I'm sorry.
One more from the audience.
You're getting flooded. I'm just sorry. Okay.
It's from Yolanda Long again. She says, "What is the name of the Black-owned business? Excuse me,
Bank.
The bank.
The Black-owned.
I assume
bank.
it's the Black-owned bank in Mississippi."
Okay. Now, in Mississippi, I actually served several years ago as president of First American Bank in Jackson, Mississippi. Unfortunately, First American did not survive. They failed several years, about 3 years after I left. But they were bought by Liberty Bank out of New Orleans. So Liberty Bank owns First American Bank. I mean, now it's Liberty Bank in Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
But we're looking along the Gulf Coast. There is no Black-owned bank along the Gulf Coast in Mississippi. Okay. We see from the standpoint they're about an hour away from us. We feel that we can adequately serve that market. We're looking to put a loan production office in that area and over in Pensacola, so that we can better serve the African American communities in those markets that are underserved by the banks that are traditionally supporting those communities.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess we will let you go. Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity.
We have certainly enjoyed this, and we have learned a lot. And perhaps a little later on in the year, or when you get your new program up and going, your mobile banking and all of that technology, perhaps we will ask you about coming back again and sharing some information with us. Will that be okay?
Happy to do so.
Great.
Again, appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come out and be a part of your program, so that we can, get the word out, what's going on in the community, and you keep doing what you're doing to get the word out and help build our community. Yes.
Well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our audience, we want to remind you that we are spotlighting Black businesses this month and every month. Now, generally, we try to do it at least once a month. Sometimes we do more than once a month. But we actually, as a community of color, we need to know what's out there. We need to know what's available, what's out there, what types of businesses they are, and how we can find them, because we need to support our own. Okay? That is our show for today. We do appreciate you being with us on this journey. And we will be back again next week, next Sunday, 4:00, same place, same time, same channel. good evening and have a wonderful week ahead of you. Thank you.